tonight's tactical enhancement is the last of the Starwood twofold. I've decided it's time for a new approach. The unit by unit rehabilitation's been dragging on a bit, so I thought let's regroup, build a bit of motivation by completing a key step for the whole army. So what I did, look at everything that's still left to do out of all of the Dark Elves, and I assembled them all. There's bolt throwers and the metho already, along with a couple of other odds and ends. So I got everything, I stripped the paint off of everything I could, assembled the lot, based the lot. Some of these were new on sprue. Actually, I had a box of 10 or so of the Corsairs. And actually those, let's see if we can get a bit of close up of them. These fellas, these are the only ones that were actually bought specifically for this army, just because the second hand ones I got were complete shit ass. They were bodged together from a variety of different kits and didn't look the part. But everything else is as it came. Dodgy camera work here. Everything else is as it came in the box. I've just patched it up. And by box I mean a couple of boxes full of half completed, sometimes half assembled stuff. So they're all based up. I'll use the same gravel that I always use, and I've given them a very, very light undercoat. This is partly because I'm using dark colours, so I don't need a dark undercoat. I don't need a hell of a lot of white. It's really just so the paint will stick instead of going onto bare metal. It's not necessary for, affecting a result in the colour brightness or anything like that. And I use washes rather than block painting and leaving a black undercoat underneath in the crevices, so it doesn't make a difference to that either. But basically what I've done is I've gotten everything up to the point where all that's left is to paint the bloody thing. And by all that's left, that's probably another year or so's worth of work, with all the other projects that I've gone on at the moment. But that's better than 3 or 4 years. So my painting speed has been a little on the iffy side, doing it unit by unit. A quick note on basing material. So I've noticed that Games Workshop have a technical pot where you can buy like a $15 piece of like rubber screwdriver, and however much you spend on a tub of paint with grain mixed in it to base up all of your bases. This is what I've been using. This is paving mix, and I found this in a big bloody heap at the back of a house I was renting with my girlfriend at the time in 2004, and someone had done a bit of renovations work, so I thought, well, that'll do, and I shoveled a fuckload of it into a bucket, not unlike this bog standard IKEA bucket, wherever I got it from. And that's done every single army that I've done for the last 18 years. Dwarfs, elves, demons, dark elves, various planes of war, World War II, World War I, World War III. Various side projects along the way. Fuck knows how many armies I've done. But they've all used this, and this is all that's left out of what was originally a bucket that big and that full. So all of that material is now in various boxes on shelves around my garage, housing my armies. In fact, I reckon I used it on some armies in Airfix miniatures, which I then traded in for more miniatures. So, yeah, I reckon there's just enough to do the demon army when I get around to it, and then that'll be it. That'll be the end of the 20 years worth of basing material out of one fucking pile of leftover shit out the back of a rental in 2004. And quite a bit cheaper than buying Games Workshop technical paints with a little rubber screwdriver. I thought I might give you a quick run through what I've got left to paint. We have, next up I suspect, 2 bolt throwers. Everyone's been telling me I need more of them, and I've been putting it off because I was a bit intimidated by how I was going to clean up these things and reassemble them because they're in so many bits. But they actually turned out to be in pretty good nick. I think I might be missing a winder off of each side of these, but that would be about it. Everything else is in good order. Got the remainder of the crossbow. So there'll be 3 units of 10 and a couple of spare, but that'll be all right. I have a raft of characters, including, let's get a good shot of this. I've got this bloke. There's a special edition guy I used in a painting contest. But the diorama I did for him is all busted up from too many years of getting knocked around. Now I've got this one, and I was hoping to put it on one of the metal cold one, but she didn't fit. The only thing I could find that this character would fit on was one of the old school cold ones. So I've attached her to this old fella, who's still got enough detail, even after undercoat, that I reckon I can paint him up reasonably well. We've got a couple of chariots. One of the old school cold one chariots is missing a bit. I might custom build something there, I'm not sure if it needs it. And one of the newfangled Spear, Hocken and Hunter chariots. And I discovered after base coating that I've actually got to replace the arm on one of those figures. They're not glued in yet because I want to do the texture of the base of the chariot properly first. What else we got? Well, we got a couple of random old, seriously old school metal cold ones, probably 4th edition. And another, I've done 10 of them up with repeat crossbow pistols, so I can have a few different options rather than just putting 2 big chunks of infantry down. It's worth noting about a dozen of these are the old school metal ones, which are great little figures. Let's get that in focus. These will paint up very nicely. Not quite as gnarly and pointy as the new fellas, but they've got a groovy character all of their own. 10 of the Dark Riders. They're really great figures. I quite like these. Bit of a nuisance to assemble and probably going to take a disproportionate amount of time to paint, but I think they'll be worth it, and they will cause conniptions amongst people of a War Machine persuasion. And then I've got, I might have to zoom this back a little bit. I've got this Cauldron of Blood. I have a particular idea on how I'm going to paint that thing, but I'm not going to tell you until I've done it. This is missing a wheel, but I figured I can get away with that. I mean, it's a second-hand army. There's bits and pieces missing all over the joints, and I've had to bodgy things up. But that's all part of the challenge and the groove of this thing as compared to buying everything brand spanking new. And then that leaves us with my dodgy conversion job, because I'm not a modeler, I'm a painter. And we've got this Dungeons and Dragons dragon. I'll put it out here so I can see it. And I've done this fella up with Malus Darkblade, I think it is. He actually came, I think, on a metal cold one. But I think it's that old, this is going back to the 90s here, I think. But I thought the general would have a dragon. I don't particularly like the Dark Elf dragon, so I thought I want to get something big, chunky, different style. This is a very Dungeons and Dragons style dragon. So I did manage to get him to fit after I'd carved enough chunks of the plastic out of this guy. A little bit rough around the edges where I've done my carving. I'm hoping it won't be too noticeable in the end product after I've painted and washed and all the rest of it. But I couldn't quite get his posture right. So I'm actually not happy with the way this guy fits on his beast. So I don't know whether to scrap it and start again, or just go with it, and because, you know, it's going to be a unique piece, and at the end of the day I'm not here to win awards, I'm here to do my own particular characterful job on things and bodge out my own shit. So I might just keep him the way he is. If there's any modifications, going to just put him back in a cold one probably, and it's kind of dull. But that's it, that's the army that I have remained to do. I've got about, it's about a 5,500 point army, maybe 5,500 point army. Probably a bit more with the characters actually. I've painted 3,000. So I'm past the halfway mark, probably about half to 2/3 of the way through. Bearing in mind that this fella here will be about, I reckon he'll probably be about 550 to 600 points just by himself. And each of those individual characters will be worth a stonking amount of points by themselves. So in terms of actually the amount of shit to paint, I'm probably about 2/3 of the way through, maybe a bit more. If I'm really awake at the helm here, I'll stick in a picture of the army that I've painted so far. So I'm hoping that by doing it that way, it'll be less of a barrier to entry to painting the next unit, so I can just grab it and start slopping paint on it straight away. And that should be a much more rewarding process than having to go back to scrubbing the shit out of things and painting up everything individually. My historic way of doing an army was to buy as much of it as possible all at once, assemble it all at once, and spray undercoat it all at once, and then get on with the business of painting it up unit by unit. But this army was done very differently. So going back to this style might get us a result a bit quicker. I think it's time for me to get into it, and otherwise call it a day.